Hello, my name's Jade and today we will be discussing Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is an adult novel about a 60s, 70s rock band. It's about how they get to the point where they're in a band and trials and tribulations of being in the band. Like, that's what it's about, but really it's about so much more. It covers such a wide variety of things. It's told really interestingly. It's told as if it was a series of interviews like spliced together, so everyone's telling their side of the story. The audiobook is amazing. If you're gonna read this, I highly recommend the audiobook. Each person in this has a different narrator, different actor, and they're all really good, and so it legitimately sounds like a series of interviews spliced together. One of the biggest things I came away from this book was how real it felt, and I think it's to do with the writing and how convincing the writing is as interviews, because they're just reading what Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote. The script, as it feels, is very realistic to human speech. There's pauses and there's blunders, and the actors just bring it to life in such a real way that I came out of it not believing that this wasn't a real rock band. It felt so real. I think there's a couple other things that attribute to that, but they're a little spoilery, so I don't really want to say. I really loved this. I had so much fun reading. It was so enjoyable. I had this weird thing where it was so good that I didn't want to just like rush through it, but I'd listen to it and I'd get sucked in and I'd listen for hours before I could turn it off. I miss it already. Like, it's been so long since I had that feeling of finishing a book and then the next day missing those characters, but I had that so hard. I'm still missing it. I only finished it a couple of days ago. I'm gonna start talking about my general thoughts. They're not gonna be spoilery, but if you don't want to know anything, I don't really love knowing a ton about people's thoughts before going into a book, because I feel like I then know what to expect and that would change my opinion, whereas if I just read it and learn it for myself. If you're like me and you don't want to know kind of my wider thoughts, I recommend leaving the video now. The characters, they felt so real. They were so great. I loved Lauren and I loved Rod. They are kind of more background characters, but they're just so chill. The women in this, they were great. It was so feministy. They all supported one another. I don't think there was any point where any of them had any like scraps or any women comparing themselves to other women, any of that stuff that we see these days. They were all very supportive of one another. They wouldn't say a bad thing about any of them, and I really respected that about this. And their relationships were also dynamic and they were complex. I loved Simone especially. The writing, I mean, I do wonder if, like, reading with my eyes I would have had a different experience. I mean, I don't think I would have. I think the actress did such a great job narrating. And the writing was so beautiful and I could hear how beautiful it was. The amount of times I had to stop and go, oh my god, that was so beautiful. Or, oh my god, yes, I relate to that. I was just taken aback constantly by the words. They were so good. I wrote some examples down, but there were so many times in this and I didn't write them all down, and so I don't remember them all because there were so many of them. I've heard some people say that they saw the ending coming. I didn't. Part of me wonders if it was because I wasn't intelligent enough to pick it up. I don't know, because I did at one point think that the ending was going to be what it was, but then I changed my mind. I don't know. I didn't see it coming. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I'll talk more about that in a minute. I think I'd give it like a 10 out of 10. No, I can't give it any lower. I loved it. It was so good. I think I did have one or two little nitpicky problems as I was going through, but I honestly can't remember them now. So I think we're good. I think that's what I'm gonna give it. I really am not appreciative of this thing. Any Reese's Book Club book it's on, and it's like not a sticker, it's just on there, and it like ruins the aesthetic of the book because it has this like really cool like 70s aesthetic going on, and this is ruining it, and I don't appreciate it. Okay, I think I'm gonna go through and talk about some of my favorite sections and quotes and little bits and bobs. So if you've yet to read Daisy Jones and the Six, I recommend you leave now because it'll be ruined for you, and I thought this was great. Yeah, that's all I have to say. If you've yet to read Daisy Jones and the Six, please leave. There's that really iconic, I feel like, muse quote. I had absolutely no interest in being somebody else's muse. I am not a muse. I am the somebody. End of fucking story. It's great. It's great. I love it. Yes. I loved the Camila Billy line. In the beginning, Camila annoyed me a little bit just because of how pushy she was. It wasn't strong or anything, like it didn't bother me. It just wasn't my fave. And then as it went on and the way their relationship was portrayed, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's more about trusting someone. And I remember like Billy, this one point, I think it was in reference to Daisy, like midway through, how he never talked to Camilla about Daisy, and some people would see that that's because they didn't trust each other, but no, it was because they trusted each other. They didn't need to know. And then Camila at one point went out for lunch lunch with one of her ex-boyfriends or something, and she didn't tell him about it because that's how trust worked. And at another point, Camila said that, yeah, we've broken each other's hearts so many times, but it's about forgiveness, it's about patience, it's about accepting that person, that you're gonna make mistakes, and about faithfulness. And I remember at another point, Camila said about how it's not easy to trust. If she's like portrayed that it's easy, then she's portrayed it wrong. But like, it's worth it in the end. I don't want to say it was a unique perspective on a relationship, but it was a really real perspective, and I really enjoyed it. And it was kind of comforting in a way, because so often in books there are these perfect relationships, and it's like comforting to know that it doesn't have to be like that, that it can still be really, really good and have ups and downs. I love this section when Camila was talking about Billy as a father. That's not like what she remembers from the album and the band. She remembers the pancake game. That specifically really touched my heart. There were so many times that I almost teared up in this. I don't know if I was detached for some reason. I don't know if it just wasn't enough to push me over the edge. There were so many really great moments. The blinking lights between Daisy and Simone, what she went through, what she had to put up with Daisy, and she was always there for her. That Italian prince, what happened there? We all knew it wasn't gonna end well. I loved how Simone kept being there for her, and the blinking lights, that was one of those moments where I very nearly teared up. Like, it made my heart swell. Oh, and when Simone was talking about Daisy's drug addiction, but at some point you have to recognize that you have no control over anybody, and you have to step back and be ready to catch them when they fall, and that's all you can do. It feels like you're throwing yourself to sea, or maybe not that. Maybe it's more like throwing someone you love out to the sea, then praying they float on their own, knowing they might well drown, and you'll have to watch. That got me. I think a tear or two may have gone down my face at that point. I loved it when Daisy would sign the little girls things with Dream Big Little Bird. That got a tear out of me. There was this great section as well with Billy about how he thought about pushing Graham into the pool. The only thing that would stop him from doing it is him and his decision, how that scared him so much. And that was really interesting. At one point, I think Daisy said, like, some people are chasing their dreams in the way that other people's are chasing away their nightmares. I think it was in reference to her parents or something. There were just so many really thought-provoking, interesting, good lines, and so many metaphors, and the way language was used was so beautiful. She had written something that felt like I could have written it, except I knew I couldn't have. I wouldn't have come up with something like that, which is what we all want from art, isn't it? When someone pins down something that feels like it lives inside us, takes a piece of your heart out and shows it to you. It's like they were introducing you to a part of yourself. And that's what Daisy did with that song, at least for me. How often I'll read something and I've like thought the exact same thing, and the way you kind of connect to it. Often writing particularly, you want to create a connection for the reader. You want them to see something of themselves in it. Alright, so Billy and Daisy obviously were a big part of this. Their relationship was really interesting, the way they went from like love to hate to love to hate to love to hate. And I think that's why I didn't see it coming, the end, because I thought we'd done that. We'd been there, done that, we're over it now. Like, I could understand Daisy not being over it because she went off and married an Italian prince, and then she started to come off the drugs a little bit, and she remembered why she went so far in the first place. Billy, I thought we were done because he keeps talking about how he has to choose Camila, and obviously he does choose Camila. There was that line about how Daisy was fire and passion is fire, but Camila was water and he needed the water, and that was a great line as well. But like, I just didn't see it coming. There was that really nice moment where she wanted to get sober and she came to him. I thought they were friends and I thought we would stay there, and for it to end so abruptly, I mean, that's obviously not the only reason. We also have the Karen and Graham situation, which was messy, and I don't even know if I want to talk about. I understand Karen completely. I did feel a bit bad for Graham because did he know what was going to happen? What really got me was when he was grieving and he felt like he was the only one that was grieving. He clearly wanted a family. He clearly wanted this child. He loved Karen. He had no one to go to. It was nice that they had their little moment where they hugged, but then they didn't want to work together anymore. And also we have that end section where Billy at the bar, Camila's talking to Daisy, and my god, was I crying? I was a mess. And then when we found out that Camila died, turns out I really cared about Camila. Like, everything she went through, and then like caring about their lives afterwards. I was a mess. It felt a little bit underwhelming. It felt a little bit anticlimactic because I thought we'd been gearing up to something big. I don't know if it's because it's like a rock band and often you expect something big with rock bands, but it also felt like I've been picking up clues and I can't find the line, but there is a line about how someone thought like predict something but you don't predict the end of the world, something to that effect, and I can't find it, but I thought that was a huge clue that something big was going to happen. It wasn't going to be what everyone expected. I mean, there was a couple lines. I think Rod said that he saw the writing on the wall. He wasn't right, but he saw the warning signs coming. I was so convinced, and I think this is done on purpose, that it was something to do with Pete. I was so convinced that Pete like had died, or there was some kind of accident, or something with Pete happened, or maybe even Eddie, because he was so angry. I think that would have been too obvious for it to have been him. There were a couple times at least where I thought he was going to kick off though, and he didn't. It doesn't matter, but I think that's one of the reasons why it felt so real, because it wasn't like these crazy big blowing up things happened. It was more like real life. Like, this is what real average people go through. Like, rock stars are just like us. It's about messy relationships. And I mean, we've seen a lot of rock bands, you know, fall apart. They can't last. Sometimes they do, but a lot of the time they can't, because it's often very big personalities and you've got a lot of them together. But man, every time like something weird happened with Pete, he showed up late to something. It was like, Pete showed up late. I tend to love books that look at relationships in this way and people interact with each other. I mean, I loved the rock element and the kind of historical element. It made me think a little bit of the Runaways film, you know, about Joan Jett's OG band. It felt almost a little bit like Bohemian Rhapsody, which is one of my favourite films. I just really loved it, and the audiobook was so good, and I just want to read it again already. Yeah, I think all I have to say. I'm assuming you read Daisy Jones and the Six if you're here. Please let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear them. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome morning, afternoon, evening / night. My name's Jade. I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye!
What's she doing, Freya?
I loved that section. It was a really, I don't want to say unique relationship. Blah, blah, blah.